This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Otelli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. Tropical storm Fung-wong set to make landfall in Taiwan, unleashing floods and power cuts. Dozens injured and thousands displaced as streets and homes in parts of the island are buried in mud and debris. Our tensions show no sign of easing between China and Japan after Prime Minister Takaichi linked a Chinese attack on Taiwan to possible military action, with growing calls in Tokyo to expel a Chinese diplomat. China and Spain vow stronger cooperation. President Xi tells King Felipe VI that Beijing wants to boost global influence with Madrid as China looks to ease trade tensions with Europe. An artificial intelligence boost for the world's biggest contract electronics manufacturer. Foxconn's Q3 net profit beats expectations, all thanks to demand for AI servers.
Asia for us is very, very important, starting from China.
Also in the bulletin, I speak to Saudi Arabia's tourism minister about his plans for attracting big spending travelers from East Asia. And the so-called crypto queen who fled China after defrauding more than 100,000 people. Dramatic footage of her arrest in a luxury UK mansion. A tropical storm Fung-wong is bearing down on Taiwan, bringing record downpours and flooding across the island. Dozens of people were reported injured, and more than 8,000 residents have been evacuated. Well, the storm is expected to make landfall this evening after leaving a trail of destruction in the Philippines. Now, parts of Ilan County in Taiwan's northeast have been left caked in mud and debris as floodwaters tore through homes and streets. Schools and businesses remain shut as monsoon winds combined with a late-season typhoon triggered neck-high floods in several areas. More than 1,000 homes were flooded in the harbor town of Suao. Footage released by the local office showed residents cleaning up their homes and businesses left damaged by the flooding. While the town's mayor said that the drainage system was not able to cope with such heavy rainfall.
在这边这样看起来都非常严重，几乎这个在淹水的地区这里那个家里都已经淹到至少大概130-40公分以上。很多我刚才到很多的这个家里去看，很多他们的有些包括生产器具，包括那个家里全部都已经泡水。
And for more on the storm's impact, we are joined now by CNA senior correspondent Victoria Jen in Taipei. Victoria, give us the latest on tropical storm Fung-wong, and we've seen some images before you came on air, but just how bad is the situation across Taiwan right now?
Yes, tropical storm Fung-wong is now moving northwest and continues to pound Taiwan with heavy rain and gusty winds. The worst-hit areas are Ilan and Hualien, where torrential downpours have triggered severe flooding and landslides. Dozens of people have been injured and several homes have been destroyed or swept away by rising waters. Images from the east show streets turn into rivers. More than 60 international flights and all 210 domestic flights have been canceled, stranding passengers across major airports. Now, roads and rail services in the east have also been disrupted by mudslides and fallen debris. Authorities warn that as the storm edges inland, southern Taiwan could see heavier rainfall, increasing the risk of flash floods and slope failures.
So, Vic, we know that some parts the drainage system was not able to cope with the heavy rainfall, but in general, how is the government seen to be responding this time around, especially after lessons from previous storms?
Well, the government has moved very quickly this time, deploying resources before the storm made landfall. More than 20,000 troops have been placed on standby across Taiwan to assist with search and rescue operations and deliver relief supplies to cut-off communities. Now, in Hualien, evacuation of more than 5,000 residents was completed ahead of the worst weather. Military units are now clearing roads and reinforcing riverbanks to prevent further collapse. And power restoration and communications repair teams have also been dispatched to the hardest hit areas. Premier Zhuo Rongtai has instructed central and local governments to maintain round-the-clock coordination through the Central Emergency Operations Center. Emergency shelters are also open island-wide, and local officials are warning people to avoid mountain roads and stay indoors and monitor official updates closely.
I really hope that the worst of it is over. Thanks so very much for that report, CNA senior correspondent Victoria Jen, live from Taipei. Now, a portion of a newly opened bridge in China's southwestern province of Sichuan has collapsed. No casualty has been reported yet. Police had closed the more than 700-meter-long Hongqi Bridge to all traffic on Monday after cracks on nearby roads and slopes appeared. Now, local officials say they had noted shifts in the mountain terrain. Conditions worsened on Tuesday, triggering landslides that led to the partial collapse of the bridge. Well, local media are now saying that there is no estimated timeline for the reopening of the highway. A row between China and Japan over Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks on Taiwan showing no signs of easing. Beijing has warned Ms. Takaichi to handle Taiwan-related issues with caution, while Chinese state media criticized the Japanese leader in a series of scathing articles. While in Tokyo, calls to expel a Chinese diplomat continue to grow.
世界上只有一个中国，台湾是中国的一部分。日本领导人在国会公然发表涉台恶劣言论，严重违背一个中国原则，粗暴干涉中国内政。我们对此强烈不满，坚决反对。外交部已向日方提出严正交涉和强烈抗议。
Well, outrage has been growing over remarks made by the Japanese leader in parliament last week. Ms. Takaichi on Friday said that a Chinese attack on Taiwan may lead to what she calls a survival-threatening situation, which can trigger a potential military response from Japan. Well, that led to a formal protest from China and a post from its consul general in Osaka, which criticized Ms. Takaichi's stance. Tokyo slammed the now-deleted post, calling it extremely inappropriate, and filed a complaint to Beijing, which has defended the post. The Japanese premier has defended her Taiwan remarks, calling them hypothetical, but vowed to refrain from making such comments again. Tokyo also urged for mutual efforts to ease tensions. Now, Taiwan, commenting on the matter, says that Japan has been consistent in its policy toward the island, adding that it's a reflection of Tokyo's national interest.
安倍晋三前首相就有提到台湾有事就是日本有事，其实后面还有一句话，也就是日美安保会有事。所以当高市早苗首相举具体的例子的时候，就是其实类似威胁到日本所谓存亡危机事态。
Now, the U.S. ambassador to Japan earlier weighed in on the post made by China's consul general, saying it threatened Ms. Takaichi and the Japanese people. Now, for more insights into the row, we will be speaking with Stephen Nagy, professor of politics and international studies at the International Christian University, a little later this hour. China and Spain have signed various agreements vowing stronger cooperation. President Xi Jinping telling the visiting King Felipe VI that Beijing wants to work with Madrid to boost their global influence. The two leaders attended a document signing ceremony. Now, Spain is the Eurozone's fourth largest economy and leads the EU in courting Chinese investment at a time when relations with the US are under strain. China, on its part, wants to move past trade tensions with the 27-nation bloc over its heavily subsidized electric vehicles industry as US tariffs weigh on its exports. For more on this, we are joined by CNA's Beijing correspondent, Han Sihui. Sihui, first up, walk us through how did ties between China and Spain move along today?
Well, both sides signed 10 cooperation documents revolving around areas such as the economy, trade, as well as science and technology, although not much detail has been provided by state media. Chinese President Xi Jinping had called on both sides to build on a comprehensive strategic partnership. He also said that China is willing to import more high-quality Spanish products. He also said that there should be more cooperation in emerging areas such as AI as well as digital economy, and said both sides should strengthen exchanges in culture as well as education, as well as extend the visa-free policy for Spain. Now, on the Spain side, Spain's King Felipe, according to Chinese state media, had said that there have been friendly, long-standing exchanges between China and Spain, and said that both sides trust and respect each other. And he said that West and China are highly consistent on issues revolving international issues. And this, he's saying that both sides support multilateralism, and he also said that both sides use dialogue to resolve conflict. And this comes as the first state visit by a Spanish monarch in 18 years, and it also coincides with the 20th anniversary of high-level bilateral relations. And this also comes after 3 visits by Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez.
So, Sihui, we don't have that many details in terms of what was being inked, but these talks and a signing ceremony, they are still significant, aren't they?
Oh, yes, definitely significant, as this visit is seen as a way to inject momentum in China-EU ties, European Union ties, especially since Spain is seen as a more friendly country, European country to China. In fact, some are calling Spain China's newest best friend. And so Spain could be seen as trying to position itself as an interlocutor between China as well as the European Union. They're also looking to rebalance trade. At the moment, we're seeing that imports from China are far greater. In 2024, imports from China to Spain exceed $45 billion, while exports to China stand at only $7.4 billion. Spain is also looking to attract Chinese investment, and so far we've seen a boost in port exports as well as more investment into EV battery factories. But at the same time, the wider EU body remains cautious due to trade imbalances, and they're also cautious about close China-Russia ties amid the Russia-Ukraine war. The U.S. had previously also warned of getting closer to China, saying that it is keen to cutting one's throat. So the visit by King Felipe is really seen as defending Spain's interests. And this comes as his trip is about to end tomorrow. His 4-day trip started in Chengdu before he made his way to Beijing, where he participated in a business forum as well as met with Beijing leaders.
All right, thanks very much for that report. CNA's correspondent Tan Sihui live from Beijing. Well, we are going to go for a short break now, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, bubbling fears about lofty AI-related firm valuations after SoftBank sells its entire stake in NVIDIA. Plus, CNA's conversation with Gary Liu from Ent International on an all-in-one platform aimed at helping SMEs in Singapore manage payments, banking, lending, and even business growth.
With the uncertainties of the financial world, where does our economy truly stand? Keep up to date with the latest market trends and get the in-depth analysis that you need to understand the forces driving the global economies. Kickstart your day with an informed view of the business world. Asia Business on Asia First, weekdays on CNA. Brought to you by UOB.
Indonesia wants to ban one of the world's most popular games, Roblox.
Dia usianya baru 9 tahun. Ya gitu dia udah kecanduan Roblox.
Terus kemudian juga mereka menjadi kurang fokus.
With other games also in the crosshairs of the censors.
Kalau sampai terlalu banyak terjadi kekerasan, harus ada punishment-nya dong.
Will tighter controls hurt the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry? Insight, Thursday on CNA.
On this episode of Singapore Hour, An inside look at how this man turns unwanted items into million-dollar sales.
From $1,000 to $5.5 million over 2.5 hours.
Plus, tea time in the sky? Discover the best ways to conquer your fear of heights.
I'm pretty sure my makeup is gone, but I think my confidence has multiplied.
Singapore Hour, Friday on CNA.
AI stocks still booming, but are all built to last?
The picks and the shovels, they are the more resilient part of this whole story.
How this young Indonesian couple's dream home became a debt trap. Plus, the Hong Kong startup built on small tasks and the biggest currency of all, time. Money Mind, Saturday on CNA.
Hello again. Time now for your business news with Roland Lin. And today we're talking about world's top contract manufacturer, Foxconn. Apparently, they've just smashed expectations with the latest results.
Yeah, all thanks to AI demand. Remember, Foxconn is NVIDIA's biggest server maker and also the lead assembler for Apple's iPhones. Artificial intelligence strength powering a better than expected third quarter report card for Foxconn, the world's largest contract electronics maker, formerly known as Hon Hai Precision, posting a net profit of $1.9 billion, beating expectations of about $1.7 billion. The NVIDIA partner also saw third quarter revenue for businesses that includes AI servers exceed those of smart consumer electronics, such as iPhones, for the second quarter in a row. Hon Hai chair Liu Yangwei says that AI will be the Taiwanese firm's most important growth driver for next year. The firm is expecting revenue from AI-related business to grow higher in the fourth quarter and market share to expand in 2026 beyond its current 40%. Hon Hai shares have been surging this year on optimism tied to its close relationship with NVIDIA. They are up some 37%, outperforming the broader Taiwan-weighted index 22% gain, although unease about an AI bubble has been growing in the sector. A tech investor, SoftBank Group, has sold its entire stake in U.S. chipmaker NVIDIA as it moves to reallocate cash to fund other AI investments. The Japanese company's quarterly financial results shows that it offloaded 32 million NVIDIA shares in October for nearly $6 billion and also sold part of its stake in American telco T-Mobile for more than $9 billion. Those asset sales provide CEO Masayoshi Son with a larger war chest to bankroll AI projects. SoftBank's exit from NVIDIA, though, is stoking fresh AI bubble fears. SoftBank shares in Tokyo fell as much as 10% earlier. It has since pared back those losses to close the day 3.5% lower, 21,910 yen apiece. NVIDIA shares also declined nearly 3% overnight on Wall Street. Ant International and its merchant arm, Antom, is launching a new AI-powered app to help SMEs in Singapore manage payments, banking, lending, and even business growth. It's called EPOS 360, and CNA's Elizabeth Neo got a sneak preview ahead of that launch at the Singapore FinTech Festival with Gary Liu, General Manager at Antom of Ant International.
So this is one app where the SME merchants are able to interact with us to onboard for SaaS payments, lending, and all the growth marketing initiatives that we're able to support them. It is indeed an AI-powered app, so even a very traditional uncle and auntie shop, they're able to use it. It's so easy to use.
Yeah, what are the gaps you hope EPOS 360 can kind of close?
Yeah, I think if you're an SME and if you want to start a business, it typically takes a long time for you to even open a bank account, accept payments. You don't have a very, a digitized way to manage your inventory, your solutions. You don't know where your customers are coming from. So this particular app, within one stop, you're able to have all of that. So they don't have to go and deal with different financial institutions, different service providers. All they need to do is interact with the app. It will give them everything.
It's an action-packed year for your company because this is coming, just a couple of months after you, Anthem, kind of launched this agentic payment solution. And so on that front, what kind of gaps do you hope it can solve for merchants and for consumers? I suppose, what kind of use cases do you envision this?
So if you think about AI agent today, if you interact with an AI agent, you either chat with him or you ask him questions, and then he will find answers to all of that. What if he can actually complete a transaction or buy a product services on your behalf, right? And then that really becomes your agent. It's not only someone that you can chat with, but someone can do all sorts of things for you. And then with that particular agent will need a payment solution. He or she will need to carry your credit card credentials in that payment. So that will require a quite robust agentic payment solution with all the trust and security embedded as part of that solution.
Right, so that's really interesting. How does the AI agent know what to buy from me?
Yeah, so the user will have to give very specific instructions and a mandate given to the AI agent. And obviously, as a payment provider, we have to verify if the transaction itself is aligned with the initial mandate the user is giving to that particular agent. So there's quite a bit of complex verification and security measures as part of that. I think the whole industry is actually going through how they define different liabilities component and who does what and all that. But we're one of the early adopters of that. Yeah.
And what I can think of now is, what if it buys something that I don't want, or it makes an unauthorized transaction? I mean, what are some of the risk management measures you have in place, and also things like disputes? So how is a customer who may want to raise a dispute because it's the AI agent has bought something and then obviously they don't want to, and then how is this resolved?
So if you think about the traditional payment value chain, you have the consumer, you have the acquirer, and then you have the merchant. Now you all of a sudden have a four-party, right? There's an agent in between. So in the past, there's a very established chargeback process for credit card payments, for example. But now there's agent coming in. You have to do one more verification. If the agent behavior is the same as the user intent, and if the payment mandate, the payment credential for that particular transaction is consistent with the user intent. So all these things, they're just extra steps that you have to put in place because there's one more party involved in the whole value chain.
Now, Pop Mart's Labubu appears to be losing some of its magic. Analysts at Bernstein have cast fresh doubts on the toy maker's blockbuster run, warning that fourth quarter results could disappoint. The brokerage highlighting that there has been consistent declines in key metrics for October in both China and overseas markets. Now, Bernstein is maintaining an underperformed rating on Pop Mart, the sole brokerage, with that grading according to data on Bloomberg. An earlier note says the company's success is built on trend-driven collectibles, making it vulnerable to sharp swings in demand. Now, launching another hit character could become exponentially harder, and existing franchises are facing major risks, including consumer fatigue. Bernstein has warned that if Labubu fades faster than new franchises scale up, well, Pop Mart's entire growth narrative could collapse. Concerns like these have already cooled the rally that made Pop Mart one of China's hottest consumer stocks. Its shares have tumbled almost 40% since a record high in August, erasing some $20 billion in market value. And the slide continued today. Pop Mart shares fell as much as 3.7% in Hong Kong before recovering some of those losses. JD.com declaring a new high reach for its Singles Day shopping festival. The e-commerce platform giant reporting a near 60% jump in orders. Now, shoppers also coming in 40% high as compared to a 20% increase last year. JD.com, though, has yet to disclose any transaction value. Rival Alibaba, too, did not reveal how Singles Day has fared so far, but at the start of its shopping festival last month, it declared that initial sales have surpassed last year's performance, with some 80 brands reporting more than 100 million Chinese yuan. That's about $14 million in sales within the first hour. Now, neither of China's two biggest e-commerce players released the total sum of transactions for last year's event as well. Singles Day is widely seen as an indicator of China's economy and domestic consumption rates. There has been concerns that persistent deflation is discouraging consumers from spending, although consumer prices unexpectedly increased in October over the holiday period. But economists widely see it as fleeting. And that'll do it for Business Oteli.
Thanks so much for that, Roland. Well, time now for another break, but coming up on East Asia tonight, Japan's new leader caught in an escalating row with China less than a month after taking office. Is she playing to the home crowd, and what are the implications for the region? We'll check in with an expert.
意营国营分行的 ATM 竟然自己在吐槽，
损失了超过8300万的现金。
Kobo 集团是幕后最大的一个骇客首脑。
Every day I was applying to about 5 jobs. All of them met with rejection.
This is the first week that I have 0 job interviews.
I saw it as a sign that I should give this vibrating a shot.
This pricing that you'll see will be the lowest I've ever seen. Live streaming is never any fresh grad's ideal job.
A new series, Graduated, Now What? Starting 15th November on CNA.
This is East Asia tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. China and Spain vow stronger cooperation. President Xi tells King Felipe VI that Beijing wants to boost global influence with Madrid as China looks to ease trade tensions with Europe. Tropical storm Fung-wong unleashing floods and power cuts ahead of making landfall in Taiwan later this evening. Dozens injured and thousands displaced. The streets in parts of the island are buried in mud and debris. And tensions show no sign of easing between China and Japan after Prime Minister Takaichi linked a Chinese attack on Taiwan to possible military action, with growing calls in Tokyo to expel a Chinese diplomat. For more insight into this latest row, we are joined by Stephen Nagy, Professor of Politics and International Studies at the International Christian University, live from Tokyo. Well, thanks, Prof, for joining us today. Before we get into the politics behind it, first up, how do you interpret this escalating diplomatic row between China and Japan? And there are even calls now growing even louder in Tokyo to expel the Chinese envoy.
Well, the escalating or de-escalating relationship between the two countries was expected in Beijing. Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae is seen as a China hawk, someone that's against China, that's someone that would take a harder line against China. So we have expected a very fierce diplomatic push from the Chinese. However, the Consulate General of China that's based in Osaka really said things that go outside the normal diplomatic jargon. He called for, having the head of the Prime Minister of Japan. I think this is seen as unacceptable in the diplomatic community, and frankly, it's seen as a threat to the Prime Minister. And I'm surprised that he's actually not been expelled yet. And I think this is mostly related to his diplomatic status rather than the wishes of Japan and the people of Japan.
Yeah, I mean, to quote, he said that the dirty head that sticks itself in must be cut off. Clearly a pretty visceral threat there. But then it was deleted soon after, though. I mean, how do you read into that?
Well, obviously, the Chinese government understood that this was unacceptable, but they always play this, sweet and sour approach to diplomacy. They use carrots and then they use hammers. And we've seen this not just in Japan. We should remember that the former Chinese ambassador to Canada called Canadians a multicultural society, a racist white supremacist society, and then they're advocating for trade and opening up the relationship. So this is nothing new. It's part of the Wolf Warrior playbook. I think what we've seen, though, is a dramatic pushback on the Japanese side, but also allies and friends of Japan who see this kind of commentary as completely unacceptable by any diplomat, whether they're Chinese or otherwise.
Right. And if we trace back, take a step back to how it all started, we've got Prime Minister Takaichi naming Taiwan outright. I mean, do you see this as a deliberate shift away from this strategic ambiguity, which, Japan has actually carefully maintained for decades?
So what we've seen is that she made a comment about if there was some kind of military action on Taiwan, that it would be a security challenge for Japan, and said that they would have to respond accordingly. This is really a shift. I think maybe the shift is in line with her mentor, the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who also said that a Taiwan security issue would be a Japanese security issue. We should be realistic that the sea lines of communication that are in and around Taiwan ferry about $2.3 trillion of goods. They're critical import-export laneways for Japan, not to mention energy. Second, I think really important, we need to think about Taiwan's place in the technological supply chains. It is the key supplier of semiconductors, and Japan is a highly sophisticated economy. Of course, if there was a military incursion in and around Taiwan, this would affect Japan's security. And lastly, I think, Taiwan's position within the first island chain really is seen as a critical part of Japan's security and the broader stability of the Indo-Pacific region. And if there was some kind of military incursion over Taiwan, that this would fundamentally destabilize the region and likely result in a regional, if not world war.
So, all of this, comes sort of very early in her tenure. Barely a month into office. Do you think she's speaking mostly to voters, foreign powers, or to both?
Both. I think she came into office being elected as the first female prime minister. She's seen as having conservative credentials, and I think those people that supported her ascension to the prime ministership really wanted to take a contrasting stance compared to the former Prime Minister Ishiba Shigeru, who was seen as soft on China and fundamentally mismanaged not only the Chinese-Japan relationship, but the U.S.-Japan relationship. So she's trying to strike a stark contrast with the Ishiba administration. At the same time, I think she's speaking to China, saying that we support the status quo across the Taiwan Strait. We support peaceful reunification that is done through consultation on both sides of the strait. And of course, it's unacceptable from not only Japan's standpoint, but many people's standpoint that any kind of reunification would take place by force. So that's the message to Beijing. And last, I think there's a lot more clarity to the ordinary Japanese citizen that it's important that Japan stands up for a regional friend with the right kind of language. And I think it wouldn't matter what she said. I think Beijing would have taken a similar approach. And I think it's not a step away from ambiguity. I think what she's done is have more continuity in the approach about speaking about Taiwan from the standpoint of how its security is connected to Japan's security and the broader region.
So if, Prof, we look at the big picture, how do you think this could reshape, bilateral dynamics? Is there something, do you see something with real diplomatic fallout from this incident?
Well, in the short term, we have to watch and see. I mean, the Chinese could take a much harder line and start to penalize Japanese firms in the mainland. They've done this in the past to Japanese firms with inspections and creating ambiguity about the visa status and exit status of executives. But they've also done this with South Korea, Australia, and Canadians. So, the sky's the limit in terms of what Beijing may do. I think that they certainly want to have Takaichi take a softer stance, and if possible, find ways to remove her through changing the electoral dynamics within Japan. And again, the first and easiest place to do that is to penalize Japanese businesses that are doing business in China, and that has, of course, a cascade effect of the internal politics within the LDP.
Always a pleasure getting your insights. Thanks so much for helping us unpack the standoff between Japan and China. Stephen Nagy there from International Christian University in Tokyo. China's foreign ministry has firmly opposed remarks made by Canberra after the Australian spy chief accused Chinese state-linked hackers of targeting the country's telecommunications network and critical infrastructure. Now, Mike Burgess named two specific hacking groups, Salt Typhoon and Volt Typhoon.
These hacking groups work for the Chinese government intelligence and military agencies. Both groups were involved in the theft of sensitive information. But the real danger was the threat of sabotage, disruption to critical infrastructure.
Beijing said that Canberra's statements serve to, quote, spread false narratives and provoke confrontation, calling them irresponsible. Espionage was estimated to have cost Australia $8.1 billion last year, and that includes the loss of about $1.3 billion in trade secrets and intellectual property. A Chinese businesswoman who defrauded more than 128,000 victims and then stored the funds in Bitcoin has been sentenced in London to 11 years and 8 months in prison. Now, Qian Zhimin earlier pleaded guilty to stealing billions of dollars through a fake investment scheme before fleeing to the UK in 2017. Stuart Smith files this report for CNA from London.
British police initially thought the 47-year-old had fled the UK when they sentenced her accomplice to prison last year. But a series of clues later led police to their main suspect, as well as the biggest haul of illicit cryptocurrency ever recovered in the UK. 61,000 Bitcoin, now worth over $6 billion. She promised her victims investment returns from cryptocurrency mining and high-tech health products, using new investors' money to pay out current ones in a classic pyramid scheme. After fleeing China by motorbike into Myanmar, she flew via Thailand, Laos and Malaysia to the UK on a St Kitts and Nevis passport with an assumed identity. When she later tried to buy a $1 million home in London, authorities became suspicious of where her wealth came from, ultimately leading to her arrest and the recovery of the hard drives and laptops that contained the Bitcoin. In sentencing remarks, the judge said, "You were the architect of this offending from its inception to its conclusion. The scale of your money laundering is unprecedented. Your motive was one of pure greed." Chinese law enforcement had already convicted 80 others in China over the fraud and were standing by to provide evidence in UK court in what would have been a first. But in the end, a guilty plea at the start of the trial meant there was no need, and therefore it's also expected there won't be an appeal. Around 1,300 alleged victims have reportedly come forward. Lawyers for some of them have told the press how their lives were ruined by the scam, destroying pension savings, marriages and families. British authorities are now looking at how to compensate victims through what are expected to be complex civil proceedings. For CNA, I'm Stuart Smith in London.
Coming up on East Asia tonight, a report on the science and economics of green hydrogen and why it matters at the COP30 Climate Summit.
Three, two. What about the animals that haven't been rescued? What about the animals that are still running the streets, defending themselves, fighting for their lives?
It is always a worry on parents' minds when they have a child with special needs.
The disability community is part of the Singapore story.
Sometimes we know that this could be the last moment that we get to spend with them.
When I tell them that I'm going to prison, they're like, okay, is it safe?
We work with the fathers to raise their awareness, increase their skills, to improve their relationship with their children.
We want to be a human present to sit with them in their pain.
Learning about yourself, about what you're good at, what you like, and what you want to do in the future is the point.
We are in a chaotic moment.
Midnight later tonight here in Thailand, it's too little too late.
And I asked whether there's a political element to it. Nobody can exactly tell you why.
Look, things are never perfect when you're engaged in politics. Each one doing what each one wants.
So what's the United Nations doing amidst this world of supreme chaos?
We're pushing for answers every night on Asia Tonight. Indonesia wants to ban one of the world's most popular games, Roblox.
Dia usianya baru 9 tahun. Ya gitu dia udah kecanduan Roblox.
Terus kemudian juga mereka menjadi kurang fokus.
With other games also in the crosshairs of the censors.
Kalau sampai terlalu banyak terjadi kekerasan, harus ada punishment-nya dong.
Will tighter controls hurt the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry? Insight, Thursday on CNA.
The California governor, Gavin Newsom, has called out U.S. President Donald Trump for his reversal of Washington's climate action, as well as attacks on the fast-growing clean energy economy. He said it was, quote, a dumb decision.
Where the hell is the United States of America? We're ceding cheap energy, green energy, infrastructure, supply chains, manufacturing. We're ceding economic power to other countries, notably China, taking advantage of that absence. And they're going to clean our clock economically unless we wake up to the economic imperative and opportunities of low-carbon green growth.
Governor Newsom is currently the highest-profile American official at the UN conference as the Trump administration chose to skip the event. Well, he and several American governors and mayors are at the climate talks in Belém to tell nations that the U.S. is trying to do its best on the climate front, despite President Trump's pro-fossil fuel agenda. Mr. Trump told the UN in September that climate change is the greatest con job ever.
California distinguishes itself from the current occupant in the White House in Washington, D.C. California is a stable and reliable partner. California just doubled down on its low-carbon green growth.
Well, green hydrogen is one of the buzzwords at the COP30 Climate Summit this year. It's clean, it's powerful, and it's being called the master molecule that could revolutionize how we fuel planes, ships, and heavy industry. Well, CNA's Ilakia Selvaraju unpacks the science, the economics, and the slow but steady race to scale up.
The term green hydrogen isn't really new. It's been talked about for years, and the conversation is only getting louder. Yes, there are pros and cons and plenty of debate over its cost and efficiency, but many still believe that green hydrogen could still be a game changer in the global climate fight.
Hydrogen is currently a 100 million ton market. It is a $150 billion market, and it is responsible for producing almost 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Hydrogen is transformative, but it is not the one-stop solution. It is a molecule that can transform intermittent renewable energy into tradable renewable fuels where they are required. But it is a systems-based approach and a solution that we need for the energy transition.
Green hydrogen is made by using renewable energy such as wind and solar to split water into hydrogen and oxygen in a process called electrolysis. And unlike grey or blue hydrogen, this method emits no direct carbon emissions. It sounds perfect, but scaling green hydrogen is expensive and complex, needing vast amounts of land, funding, and time. And that's why companies such as Intercontinental Energy are reimagining how to build big hydrogen systems piece by piece.
problem with large projects is they become really complex. So what we had to do was find a way of doing large projects, but in bite-sized chunks that are repeatable, modular, and lower the complexity and risk. So if you imagine like Lego blocks, rather than doing a really complicated project, we can roll out Lego blocks in stages. And so what the node architecture does, it allows us to break up our huge projects into these bite-sized chunks to reduce the risk and therefore accelerate the delivery of the projects.
Their node system aims to cut costs by 10 to 20%, a major step in a price-sensitive industry. But while ambition is high, progress is slow. Hydrogen is not yet the fuel of today, and expectations may have outpaced reality.
One of the issues we've had in hydrogen is unreal expectations of how quickly we can deliver. And so what we're now seeing is this period of, let's say, initial hype is over, and the real projects are actually starting to be delivered. But they're being delivered in a realistic way, which means that we will scale over time and over decades, and we will achieve what people want from us. But it's just, we have to be also patient and honest about how we're going to do that.
At that pace, hydrogen may only make up about 2% of global energy by 2050. Well, not flashy, but consistent with how every other clean energy technology has grown. In places like Western Australia, where intercontinental energy operates, the land is vast and ideal for mega greenfield projects.
Australia is emerging as a green hydrogen powerhouse, not just in resources, but in vision and incentives. With partners such as BP, Shell, and backing from GIC and Hy24, these projects are gearing up to export renewable fuels globally, including to Singapore, which is positioning itself to be a regional hub for hydrogen. Its strategic location and technological edge could help it emerge as a leader, even without vast land or sun.
We have cheap green electrons in India, in China, in Southeast Asia, in many parts of our region where Singapore is situated right front and center, that we can think about making cheap green molecules with these renewable electrons. So this fundamental shift away from the petro to the electrostate is guiding not just a green premium, but a practical, pragmatic, energy security, supply-rooted solution to decarbonization.
So green hydrogen has a role to play. But I think those that saw it as a panacea or silver bullet, I think their expectations have been a little bit too high. But that doesn't mean that the industry doesn't have huge potential and that it's necessary. And companies like ours, we understand that this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And we're committed to the long term.
The road ahead is long and results won't come overnight. But for those betting on the future, green hydrogen still holds promise. As countries face pressure to deliver real decarbonization action at COP30 this year, the question now is whether green hydrogen could finally move from potential to proven climate solution. Ilakia Silveraji, CNA, Singapore.
And we've got more climate-related coverage across CNA platforms, including on our website, cna.asia, and our mobile app, including a commentary on why the COP climate talks still matter. Saudi Arabia is racing to reinvent itself, to diversify its economy beyond oil. Tourism is at the heart of that transformation, with Asian travelers being a key part of the strategy. Well, I spoke to Tourism Minister Ahmed Al-Khatib about how the kingdom plans to woo them.
Asian market is important. It is about 40% of the global travel market. Asia for us is very, very important, starting from China and other countries. China last year have 120 million Chinese travel outside China. 80% of them traveled for a long distance to the Middle East and to Europe, etc. And therefore, for us, China is very important market. Japan is very important market. Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on and so forth. We have been in contact with all the travel agents, including Trip.com, to learn more about the Asian travelers and understand what do they need when they travel. And we have been providing all the destination with everything the Asian travelers needs. The Asian travelers like the history, and they like the heritage. They need to experience their food and the destination they travel to, food and custom and history and heritage. They like to visit the museum, and they like to learn about other nation cultures. And therefore, we are making what is necessary to attract the Asian travelers and fulfill their requirements for them to come and enjoy their experience in the country. In addition to this, we have connected Asia with direct flight from China. For example, we launched the China Eastern Airlines and China Western Airlines and many other airlines to fly direct to Riyadh and Jeddah and Al-Ula.
Right. So China, you've mentioned, is a huge part of your visitor strategy, and you have this China-ready promise. So basically, Saudi Arabia, being able to provide Mandarin-speaking guides, digital payment systems, cultural adaptation. I'm curious to know, Minister, how far along are you? I mean, these changes, are they visible on the ground yet?
We are very far, and we are seeing a lot of Chinese friends visiting our destinations, especially Al-Ula, Riyadh and Jeddah, to learn about the Arabian cultures and to experience the Saudi hospitality. We are satisfying them when it comes to the food offering, the beverage offering, the entertainment, and also the history and heritage. We are expanding the tour guides. Many of them speak Mandarin, and the taxi drivers. However, we started to use the technology to satisfy our friends from China, where our AI agent called Noura speaks very well Mandarin and can support all the questions that the Chinese travelers would ask.
So Saudi Arabia deepening its tourism, economic links with China, but you also remain a close security partner of the United States. And this alignment, I mean, does it ever create friction behind the scenes, particularly when tourism partnerships, because that can double as soft power tools as well?
Not at all. Tourism never gets to politics. Tourism is people to people. We receive many Chinese tourists and many American tourists, and our doors and hearts are open for every nation. Today in Tourise, we have more than 120 nations gathering in Tourise, talking about everything, about the business, about the future of the sector. And we also welcome tourists from China for other purposes, not only business or MICE or conferences. They come to spend their holidays here and to enjoy our food and our history and our heritage. And therefore, the tourism never gets into politics.
Good to know. Also, I want to pick up on the flagship NEOM project, especially the line, which was once envisioned as this 100-mile-long city of the future. Well, now that's not quite happening. It's been massively scaled back. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned there that will shape the next phase of Vision 2030?
It is just taking longer than expected. The Trojena is under construction and moving as per their plan. Hexagon is also under construction, and it's moving, and therefore they have just extended their plans. I believe, as the deputy CEO said, we are extending our plans. However, we are going as per of the plan that we announced.
I hope you've enjoyed this Wednesday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. Thanks for watching.